West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Bob Woodward, as we gather more detail to the very detailed account you already have in peril, what strikes you as the most important thing for people to know about what the president was doing on January 6th?
Well, I mean, there's more in the book about Trump threatening Pence. I want to be very accurate and quote accurately. He said, "You can't do this." In other words, certify Biden as president. I don't want to be your friend anymore. You've betrayed us. I made you. Your career is over. And at another point in all of this, Trump said to Pence, "I picked the wrong man 4 years ago." And then you did that you're going to wimp out. And so, I mean, think about it. Put yourself in Pence's shoes. Here he is, the loyal man for 4 years doing everything. I mean, I remember being in the Oval Office with interviewing Trump, and he had, they always bring people in, and there's Pence standing there at attention, almost eyes glazed over, this was the routine, and so here Trump says these things to Pence and is pushing him in a way rarely, I think, and perhaps never, a president has pushed a vice president. And then Pence, though wobbly at a number of points here, he no doubt, we lay it out. It is a pretty, you could almost write a book, and somebody suggested there should be a Broadway play written about Pence from our book and what's on the record and what else can be found out. And it would be the story of an internal political and moral struggle which Pence went through.
And as we see in polls, nothing has made Mike Pence more unpopular with Republicans than doing what he was legally required to do on January 6th. Robert Costa, Donald Trump was asking Mike Pence nothing less than to commit a televised federal crime for Donald Trump and for Mike Pence's own benefit to retain the vice presidency. And Mike Pence, of course, refused to do that. In Washington, apparently that can be portrayed as heroism, refusing to commit a federal crime on TV.
I'm not here to declare heroes or villains, but what we see at the end of the day in this story is Donald Trump was trying to use Mike Pence to weaponize a lie. a lie about the election. And this took Pence to the brink on January 5th in the Oval Office. And when Trump didn't get what he wanted there, he called up Bannon, he called up Giuliani, and he said, let's issue a statement and say Pence agrees with us, even though he didn't. That happened on the night of January 5th. The badgering continues on January 6th in the morning, and it's so revealing. Pence doesn't even go to the White House on January 6th. He works from his home, then goes to the Capitol, avoiding the Oval Office. Once again, he's huddling with his lawyers, some on the phone. He said, let's get this letter out. Let's go to the Capitol. That doesn't make him a hero. It makes him someone who resisted Trump for the first time, really, in an entire vice presidency. And he was being told, you will shake the constitutional core of this country if you go up to that lectern on January 6th and walk away, because then you would have a sitting president and a sitting vice president refuse to endorse the incoming president.
And Bob Woodward, we know that when Donald Trump was not watching TV gleefully, according to this new report, or when he wasn't just staring at it blankly, according to Keith Kellogg, he was continuing during the attack on the Capitol to try to influence senators and House members.
Yes. I mean, again, we look at this and let's put this in the context of President Biden's speech today. I thought it was the strongest speech that Biden's ever given. I'll say to you, Costa and I talked earlier today, and somebody who helped Biden write that speech or wrote it read our book. And one of the key elements, and it's hard to pick out and say, oh, this is the key, or there are only 5 key elements, because it's a coherent portrait of, in my view, a crime on the Constitution. To look at the system we have and the certification process, which the president of the Senate, that is the vice president, according to the Constitution, has to get up and, before the Congress, certify and count the votes. That is in the Constitution. Everything Trump did in this alleged, stolen election where there's no evidence is a part of that. I wanted to read something. Costa and I continued some of our reporting even after the book came out, but a former senior Trump cabinet officer that we talked to said the following, because inevitably you're looking at how did this happen? What is the why? And this former cabinet officer said, my basic feeling was that whatever ability President Trump had to control himself vanished on election day. And in an important way, I think that says it. Not that Trump was an expert at controlling himself, but any particle of self-control and that ability to kind of strategize and so forth evaporated on election day when he realized he had lost. And so all of November and December were spent trying to manufacture and enhance and support. It's called the big lie. I don't really use that term, but what is important, there's no evidence. There is zero evidence, as Biden said today, as we show in the book. The Trump supporters investigated and ran it to ground, as they say. Lindsey Graham, of all people, had his chief counsel investigate Rudy Giuliano's memos, and I brought them here. It's a half-inch thick packet of allegations, and none of them check out. And at the end, somebody said to Senator Graham, well, look, they're making these allegations. And Graham, who can at times have a sense of humor. So, look, I can get a sign and sworn affidavit today declaring that the world is flat. And so that's what Trump had, that's what his lawyers produced, and does not add up to any fraud. Zero.
I want to listen to more of what President Biden said today, which does rely on reporting that first appeared in your book about the president watching television in what Chairman Benny Thompson of the January 6th committee focuses in on as those 187 minutes when Donald Trump did nothing about the attack on the Capitol. Let's listen to the way the president put that today.
We didn't see a former president who had just rallied the mob to attack sitting in the private dining room off the Oval Office in the White House, watching it all on television and doing nothing for hours as police were assaulted, lives at risk, the nation's capital under siege.
And Robert Costa, we now have Liz Cheney tonight saying that those 187 minutes of doing nothing are the focus of a possible criminal offense by Donald Trump.
As a reporter, I have a slightly different take on all of this. Was Donald Trump idle during that period? Yes, he was. But based on our reporting, this is not someone who was having some kind of idle episode that comes out of nowhere. This is more like a football coordinator sitting in a box watching a team on the field. This is someone who, along with John Eastman, the conservative lawyer, Bannon, Giuliani, was cooking up a strategy to do one of two things: either overturn the election or delegitimize Biden's entire presidency. Essentially try to convince the country that Biden was a fraud president, try to make it impossible for him to govern. And that Eastman memo, if you read those 2 pages we unearthed for this book and read it again, this was a coordinated pressure campaign with intent. So while he was idle on the day of, and that is an area of scrutiny to be sure, it's the days prior and the intent to overturn the election that, to me as a reporter, is almost a bigger story.
It is Friday, the 7th of January of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, we had the somber acknowledgement of January 6th yesterday, and of course, one whole party decided that they were not going to take part because they did all the taking part they needed to do on January 6th of 2021. This is where we are. I guess you could say that we're marching irrevocably towards a civil war, armed conflict between neighbors, family, friends, acquaintances. And I guess, what? We're just supposed to accept that and the inevitability of it? Is that what we're supposed to do? Or can we nip it in the bud? You know, in Germany, they have some fairly what we would call draconian laws, but there's a reason for it. If you let the Nazis have a foothold, they're going to grab you by the neck. I'm telling you that we could do some very simple things. I know it would seem draconian. I know it would seem discriminatory. But sometimes things need to be done. Sometimes we need to just put our foot down. Sometimes we need to make a line in the sand. No voting for Nazis, and no Nazis voting. It's very simple. They already have the apparatus to try to diminish the ability of anybody they don't like from voting. We'll just use their apparatus. It'll be quite simple. They've already gone door to door to intimidate Democrats. We'll just use that as a way of ferreting out the Nazis in our midst. If there is a war against the United States of America and democracy itself, I'm sorry, sometimes civil liberties for Nazis have to go by the wayside. I know there's the argument, oh, you're acting just like them. Well, I apologize. Sometimes you got to fight fire with fire. Extending a hand in goodwill for some sort of bipartisan agreement doesn't seem to be working when they won't even mourn the dead cops that died on that day or because of that day. When they wouldn't acknowledge the pain and suffering that those cops are still suffering from to this day, some still going through surgeries. They couldn't acknowledge that effort to save them on that day. Do they feel they didn't need to be saved? Were they part of the mob? Now, these are all questions that can be answered in congressional investigations and criminal. And if we need to take the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, and yeah, that would be, the third article there. Anybody who wages an insurrection against the United States and takes part in it in any capacity cannot hold office. We will start there. No voting for Nazis. And then Nazis are out there trying to vote. I guess we're just going to have to, go after them somehow, won't we? And how will we do that? Like I said, they already have the apparatus in place to diminish the vote of all the black, brown people and their friends. We don't need to build anything new. In fact, they're so intent on material gain, and that's supposedly the only thing that matters to them. Oh, Nazis make my stock go up. Really, do they? I don't think so, but we'll go with you. We'll go with you on that, okay? Since they're all about material gain, we already have the holding pens for them. I think they're called gated communities. We'll just shut the gate. They have everything they need. They got their little strip shopping malls. They got their little pond with a water fountain in the middle of it. They'll think they're living the life of Riley. That's how old we are. Because we would use that life of Riley as if someone would actually understand what the hell we're talking about. It's Friday. I assure you I have not had a French 77 yet. It is much too early where we sit here in Rogue River. Yes, indeed. Much too early. So we had to put up with the Newt Gingriches saying, oh, the Democrats are so divisive. Look what they're doing about January 6th. You had, what's-his-face, that weasel, Cruz, going on Tucker Carlson, going, I didn't mean to say it was a terrorist act. That's what I meant to say it was a terrorist attack by Antifa. He never did get there, but they were trying. The Republican Party is not a member of our government. We have to understand that. They are in opposition to democracy. Why are we allowing them to eat it out from inside? Gnawing away like a little parasite. I don't want to use the cancer meme, okay? Because that's really insulting to cancer. Why do we allow that? You know, in Germany, they don't. You can't even put up a swastika in Germany. Here, it's like, oh, well, they got a constitutional right to be haters and to kick people in the teeth. I swear to God. Look at the rise of the fascisti, the black shirts and the brown shirts, and the indoctrination of military and former military into their ranks. And see how that tracks so closely to the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, the Boogaloo Boys, etc., etc., etc. Look at the total destruction of our, gun laws? As if the Nazis get a constitutional right to amass an armory in which to attack the United States of America? And we allow them to hold office, and we allow them to vote? My God. We already have the apparatus. Charge them with a felony, and they don't get to vote until we decide that they do, when they pay all their fees back. And when they think they've paid all their fees back, there's some more we forgot to tell them about. We already have the apparatus in place. Why don't we use it? Now, I have to say, I know that there's building the foundational or the evidentiary foundation, and all these people who just went, they went into the Capitol, but they didn't think they were doing anything wrong. Yeah, right. This is the equivalent of like the pictures that you see in the media where there's like a group of white people leaving a flooded out department store carrying items, and they're called survivors. And then there's another picture of some black and brown people, coming out of the same flooded out department store or grocery store, and they're called looters. That's what's happening in a certain respect to the January 6th insurgents. I'm just saying that a lot of these people who were being charged with misdemeanors, I think they would, if they weren't dead, if they were black and brown people, they would be put away for not misdemeanor crimes. Not a doubt, not at all. I'm sorry. It's just, I'm astounded that these enemies of America are allowed to have a say. Are we supposed to, in this instance, they're innocent until proven guilty? Well, they won't even answer a subpoena. And we don't do anything about it. They're survivors. Now, if they were looters, Jesus, every book in the world would be thrown at them. Some would have to be made up. Two-tier justice system. Hey, my middle name is Justice, and there's only one tier to justice. It comes out of this eye, and it comes out of that eye. And I call that one tier. It doesn't matter how many tears are coming out of both eyes. It's all one tier because the source, the lake of tears and the somber aspects of my soul. One tier. See where I went? Okay, like I said, it's Friday. I assure you we have not imbibed in any French 77s. Okay? Just, maybe something else. Maybe. Not enough coffee. Okay? That's where we are. Anyway, we've made it to the weekend. I'm still upset about January 6th. I'm going to be for quite a while. Because I don't know. Am I getting conservative in my old age? Because I just want this great experiment to continue. I like the idea of representative democracy. I don't like the idea of warlords and Stormtrooper brown and black shirts telling me to get out of their way, and if I don't, they're going to kick me in the teeth and grind me in the ground with their iron heel of their blue boots. Yeah, well, and this had to happen when I'm like we were all old and we can't really defend ourselves anymore. Not like we used to. Jesus. Now we got all these like steroid-addled, human growth hormone-addled idiots. Jesus. If they only knew what those compounds do to their little pee-pees, okay? They don't call them pea brains for nothing, okay? I'm just telling you. These compounds change a 5'11", 195-pound baritone into a 6'3", 280-pound soprano. Jesus. I'm serious. They better watch out. Especially since they put such great value upon their masculine and, belligerent manner. The more belligerent you are, the more alpha you are. I don't think so. We're human beings. Alpha males in the human species are a little bit, strong but silent types, maybe. Okay? Which I guess just eliminated me from being an alpha male, because am I silent? Apparently not. But we all need to raise our voice. And I'll say this. Joe, yesterday in his speech, punched the Nazis. See, that's how it's done. People say, well, we can't go out and be physically violent. We can't punch those people. Well, Joe just did. You punched the Nazis in their wallet. You punched these Nazis, kind of like where they live. You get the nomenclature of the English language. That's how you punch the Nazis. All right? That's one way. So, wasn't so hard, was it? It wasn't so bad. You push us enough, the sleeping giant will be roused, and they will not like it. Okay? We turned them on their axis before. We'll do it again. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on this fine Blue Moon Spirits Fridays? Well, yeah. At the top, Woodward and Costa broke it down about how Mike Pence resisted Trump for the first time during the Trump presidency on January 6, 2021. That brings to mind something that's eating at me as well. About the Secret Service in the midst of all this. Now, we're finding out that the Secret Service said to Kamala, go ahead into the DNC building. Everything's cool. Well, there was a live pipe bomb that had been planted, we think, by Marjorie Taylor Greene. We don't know. Okay? All I know is that she's going to get her committee assignments back. So somebody tried to assassinate the vice president of the United States, and the Secret Service said, yeah, go ahead. So that brings to question, the kind of security that's going on here. Because on that same day, Mike Pence would not get into the limo with the Secret Service because he knew he would be Jimmy Hoffa. And then I'm also reminded about what I call the debauchery and irresponsibility of the Secret Service during the Obama years. Like they didn't really care that much about protecting his administration or he himself. Apparently. I don't want to put the onus on every individual, but it seems that maybe we ought to start looking at the Secret Service and people in there who might have been infiltrated or adopted some sort of mindset. I don't know. What kind is that? Well, I don't know. How do you let the Vice President of the United States go into the DNC building when there's a live pipe bomb outside? Okay, back to what's on the rest of the menu here. It's a salon. We go off. 20 of Yellowstone National Park's renowned gray wolves were shot by hunters just outside the park perimeter in recent months. Yeah, in fact, pretty much eliminating one whole clan. We'll never see them again. South Dakota made it harder for women to get abortion meds because they want handmaidens there, apparently. And former New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof is ineligible to run for Oregon governor because he does not meet the state's 3-year residency requirement. You own property here, but you vote in another state for a while, you got to wait 3 years. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where hackers hit a major Portuguese media group, taking down its websites, and the U.S. question the legitimacy of Russia-led peacekeeping troops in Kazakhstan. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by the Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of the chat room link, across the page, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, there is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, I'm sorry this is a broken record to those of you who have heard this for almost 11 years now, but I feel compelled to remind folks that maybe don't know already that we pay our bills, and that allows us to fly under the radar and continue this powerhouse of resistance against dark forces arrayed against democracy and, life itself, apparently. Your generosity in the form of, how about an espresso-type coffee drink? Well, if you could send those funds to us once a month, I cannot tell you what kind of dent it puts into the bills that are ever increasing. It's almost like inflation. I call it price gouging. But I don't know. I don't want to say too much because, these might be our friends someday, and you don't want to offend them. So we have been flying under the radar because we do the little things like pay our bills. Isn't it amazing how that works? And, of course, there is the constant upgrade to software and hardware. No one makes anything that lasts. Why don't they do that? Anyway, thank you for your generosity, and thank you ahead of time for generosity in the future for those of you who will consider helping us out, because I got to tell you, we do. We're not getting Soros money. I wish I could just get the interest on the Soros money that we're supposed to be getting since we divested from the Krugerrand. Boy, I got to tell you, non-fungible tokens. I just want my Soros money. Jeez. Not in non-fungible tokens, though. All right. I got enough of those. All righty. Let's see. Also, if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary. Not a story, it's a diary. About 10 minutes before showtime, and the show notes and links are very important because, really, come on, that's where the real reportage is. And good to know what they say. So, yes, also you can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker. Yes, we're fully operational on Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. We do have the bulk of Netroots Radio shows going back almost 11 years now at the Internet Archive. So I'll get links up in the appropriate places so you can find the team shows at the Netroots Radio team show site on the Internet Archive. And there's lots of them. Also, in terms of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, there's something weird. It could be the antiquity of the machinery that I'm using. But bulk loading from Spreaker didn't happen. So it would miss like whole swaths of a month. And then going back and, possibly doubling up. Fortunately, everything is in Dropbox, so those shows that I might have missed that are not possibly in the Internet Archive, when I get time, I'll start scraping through all of that there and find out what's missed and duplicated. Though there is a easy way to get rid of duplications, and I think I did pretty well on that, but we'll see what months that the bulk of what months might have been missed. We'll see. There was lots of them. There was, thousands of hours of just West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. My gosh. And then we have all of our other shows, too, that are bumping up around those numbers as well. There you go. All right. So this first offering here, I better hurry up because we just burned up time on the morning rant. We do that now because we're a salon. We can do anything we want. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Matthew Brown from the Associated Press. 20 of Yellowstone National Park's renowned gray wolves roamed from the park and were shot by hunters in recent months, the most killed by hunting in a single season since the predators were reintroduced to the region more than 25 years ago, according to park officials. 15 wolves were shot after roaming across the park's northern border into Montana, according to figures released to the AP. 5 more died in Idaho and Wyoming. Park officials said in a statement to the AP that the deaths mark, quote, a significant setback for the species' long-term viability and for wolf research, end quote. One pack, the Phantom Lake Pack, is now considered eliminated after most or all of its members were killed over a 2-month span beginning in October, according to the park. An estimated 94 wolves remain in Yellowstone, but with months to go in Montana's hunting season and wolf trapping season just getting underway, park officials said they expect more wolves to die after roaming from Yellowstone, where hunting is prohibited. Park Superintendent Cam Shawley first raised concerns last September about wolves dying near the park border. He recently urged Montana Governor Greg Gianforte to shut down hunting and trapping in the area for the remainder of the season. Shawley cited the extraordinary number of Yellowstone wolves already killed this hunting season in a December 16 letter to Gianforte released to the AP under a Freedom of Information request. Gianforte, an avid hunter and trapper, and a guy who likes to slam little reporters, body slam them into the ground, break their glasses, bruise their ribs. You know that guy? He didn't directly address the request to halt hunting in a Wednesday letter responding to Shawley. Gianforte last year received a warning from a Montana game warden after trapping and shooting a radio-collared wolf about 10 miles north of the park without taking a state-mandated trapper education course. In his response to Shawley, the governor said Montana protects against overhunting through rules adopted by the Wildlife Commission, which can review hunting seasons if harvest levels top a certain threshold. Of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. South Dakota lawmakers yesterday, Thursday, approved Governor Kristi Noem's new rule for medical abortions that make the state one of the hardest places in the U.S. to get abortion pills. The rule requires women to return to a doctor to receive the second of 2 drugs used to carry out a medication abortion. Usually, women receive both drugs in one visit, taking the second medication at home. Doctors and abortion rights advocates decry the rule as a dangerous intrusion on the relationship between doctors and patients. The Republican governor initiated the rule's change in September through an executive order, ahead of the FDA's decision last month to permanently remove a requirement that women seeking abortion pills pick them up in person. The new rules, spurred by the governor's order, had stalled in a legislative session committee last month after Republican Senator Timothy Johns said he did not see any evidence that the requirement was really necessary for the abortion seeker's safety, as Noem argued. Johns on Thursday sided with 3 other Republicans on the committee in approving the rule change, which is expected to take effect later this month. Andrew Selsky of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Oregon election officials ruled yesterday, Thursday, that former New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof is ineligible to run for governor because he does not meet the state's 3-year residency requirement. Secretary of State Shemaya Fagan, a Democrat, said it was obvious Kristof had been a New Yorker until just over 1 year ago, citing in particular his having voted in New York in the 2020 election. Oregon statute provides directly that if a person casts a ballot in another state, they are no longer a resident of Oregon. It's very, very simple, Fagan told reporters. For 20 years, living, working, raising his kids, holding a driver's license, filing taxes, and voting as a New York resident until a year ago just doesn't pass the smell test, she added. Kristof fired back, vowing to appeal the decision and tweeting, "A failing political establishment in Oregon has chosen to protect itself rather than give voters a choice. I come from outside the political establishment, and I don't owe insiders anything." Well, yeah, you've been kind of out of the state. Just owning property doesn't mean, if you're an absent landlord, I suppose you want to have a say, don't you? They view my campaign as a threat, and so instead of working to end homelessness, they're working to end my candidacy. I suppose they could just change the rules and say, you don't have to live here for 3 years. You can be here for a month. For 2 years, the 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner was a globe-trotting foreign correspondent and columnist. 4 years and years and years. The 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner was a globe-trotting foreign correspondent and columnist. Kristof's attempt to run as a Democrat for governor generated a lot of interest, and he raised more than $1 million in less than a month. Questions about Kristof's residency had dogged him even before he announced his candidacy in October, the same month that the New York Times announced he had resigned. According to Oregon law, a candidate for governor must have been a resident of the state for at least 3 years before an election. Kristof, age 62, told election officials in a sworn statement that he moved as a 12-year-old with his parents to a farm in Yamhill, Oregon, in 1971 and has considered it to be his home ever since. He has purchased additional acreage nearby since then. His lawyer said he paid taxes on the properties and that he filed Oregon income taxes for 2019 and 2020. Oregon election Director Deborah Scrogan and compliance specialist Linda Palucci told Kristof in a letter yesterday, Thursday, that they rejected his filing for governor because he did not meet the constitutional requirements to be a candidate. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, down the rabbit hole again. Given the industry trend towards reboots, The Matrix Resurrections kind of makes sense. Yeah, Neo and Trinity may have died in the last and frankly forgettable installment, but anything is possible in sci-fi world. Writer and director Lana Wachowski adequately explains how the two leads, played by Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss respectively, are back and acknowledges the cultural impact that The Matrix has had since its debut over 20 years ago. And she's not afraid to have some fun with it. One of the best scenes in the movie is Thomas Anderson and a group of hipster programmers sitting around discussing the deeper meaning of the Matrix. This time out, Thomas is a successful game programmer credited with having invented the most popular game of all time that, you guessed it, is called The Matrix. Not only is the hero called Neo, but there is also a Morpheus and a female hero called Trinity. Despite his success, though, Thomas can't help but feel that there is something off with his world. Is it even real? If all this sounds familiar, it is. Not only are Neo and Trinity back, but so are Morpheus and Agent Smith, albeit played by different actors, which feels confusing and is one of the major weaknesses of this one. With that said, the positives outweigh the negatives here, especially for those nostalgic for late 90s, early aughts sci-fi. Both Reeves and Moss have aged well, and the chemistry between them still works. At its heart, The Matrix was always a love story and a story about the choices we make. Wachowski wisely keeps that going. And yeah, there are still lots of shootouts and jaw-dropping effects. The Matrix Resurrections escapes mindless reboot territory, so take the red pill and enjoy. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Britain increased its control over the American colonies after 1763, following its victory over the French in the 7 Years' War. Parliament increased taxes in the colonies, rankling Americans who were used to managing their own affairs. Edmund Burke urged his fellow parliamentarians to revert to your old principles. Seek peace and ensure it. Leave America, if she has taxable matter in her, to tax herself. But Britain instead sought to exercise ever greater control over the colonies. One example is the Proclamation of 1763. It forbade the colonists from settling Native American lands west of the Appalachians. The purpose of the proclamation was to reduce the possibility of war between the colonists and the tribes, thereby reducing the costs of defending the colonies. However, there was increased pressure by the colonists to expand westward in search of new habitable land, and they were upset that Britain would seek to limit their ability to do so. That's all for today's podcast. The show's theme song is Complacent by Cheryl B. Engelhart. You can find Cheryl online at cbemusic.com. 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
At the Supreme Court, what's the shadow docket? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Mention the Supreme Court, and you probably envision a deliberative, thoughtful process that begins with the list of cases that the justices will decide that term. It's docket. Cases thoroughly litigated, for example, after a federal district court trial, and lengthy review by a court of appeals, followed by extensive briefing and oral argument at the high court itself, and then an opinion, with all votes and reasoning publicly disclosed. It's a process designed to appear thoughtful and transparent. In a word, judicial. But now, with increasing frequency, the court is plucking cases for decision from its shadow docket, which operates differently from what we've just described. Although a mechanism for dealing with emergencies has existed since the court's inception, this court's shadow docket is different. Cases on the shadow docket have not had the same deliberative process, and the shadow docket is being used more frequently and consequentially for decisions on, for example, the death penalty, abortion, immigration, and COVID-19 safety restrictions. The shadow docket cases can be a rush to judgment that ends in a decision a sentence or two long with no name of any justice attached. The Supreme Court's extensive use of the shadow docket is problematic because it undermines the public's faith in the court at a time in its and the country's history when the court needs to be seen as operating in the sunshine and not in the shadows. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. Events on this day began what is known as Semana Tragica, or Tragic Week in Argentina. Labor unrest had been mounting in Buenos Aires. On this day, police killed 4 workers who were striking for better wages, hours, and conditions at the British-owned Vesna Ironworks plant. The workers were demanding an 8-hour workday. The following day, workers on the waterfront declared a strike. Ships came to a halt. The following day, a funeral march for the killed ironworkers turned violent. Angry marchers burned a car and attacked a tram station. The police fired on the procession, wounding and killing some of the demonstrators. Anarchists and workers took to the streets, and within 2 days, tens of thousands of workers had joined the general strike. Newspapers, hotels, bars, and even telephone lines ceased operating. Railroad workers called for a sympathy strike. The Argentinian Federal Police, the Argentinian Army, the Argentinian Marine Corps, and the Argentinian Navy cracked down brutally on the strikers, targeting anarchists and labor leaders. The anti-Semitic Argentine Patriotic League blamed the unrest on Jewish-Russian Bolsheviks. They conducted a violent pogrom in the Jewish neighborhood of Once. Jewish residents were dragged out of their homes, beaten, and in some cases shot. By the end of the bloody week, the police and military had killed at least 100 protesters, with some estimates as high as 700. Thousands of workers were beaten, thousands of workers were wounded, and more than 55,000 were imprisoned. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 47 degrees. Considerable cloudiness with occasional rain showers throughout the day. Looking to have something, a bit less than a quarter of an inch, and then might have some drying out tomorrow and Sunday, possibly. We'll see how that goes, but much cooler days. And we are going to forego the deep dive into the local forecast so that we can get into weather from around the world. That's brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 42 degrees and sunny. Paris is 47 and cloudy. Rome is 55 and sunny. Kyiv is 28 degrees and fair. Kabul is 32 and cloudy. Hong Kong is 60 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 38 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees with light rain. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and cloudy. And New York is a freezing 30 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Associated Press staff brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. One of Portugal's leading media conglomerates said that a group calling itself Lapsus hacked the company's online services, taking down some of its most popular websites and contacting subscribers. Grupo Impresa said the attack was aimed at disrupting the company's services and sending fake news messages to subscribers, including one that said, "Breaking! President removed and accused of murder. Lapsus is Portugal's new president." The company said in a statement, the hackers did not demand any payment.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous staff at Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The United States is closely monitoring reports that peacekeeping forces of the Russia-led Collective Security Treaty Organization have been deployed to Kazakhstan and has questions about whether they were legitimately invited to the country, the White House said yesterday, Thursday. Fresh violence erupted in Kazakhstan's main city after Russia rushed in paratroopers to put down a countrywide uprising in one of Moscow's closest former Soviet allies. The General Secretary of the bloc told RIA news agency that the overall peacekeeping force would number about 2,500 and could be strengthened if necessary. Washington would be watching for any violations of human rights violations and any actions that may lay predicate for the seizure of Kazakh institutions. Earlier yesterday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke with the Kazakh foreign minister regarding the ongoing state of emergency in Kazakhstan. The secretary reiterated the U.S.'s full support for Kazakhstan's constitutional institutions and media freedom and advocated for a peaceful, rights-respecting resolution to the crisis, the State Department said in a statement. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver.